Welcome, everyone, to this explainer. If you're a student prepping for exams or just kind of curious about the world, you are in the right spot. Today, we're diving into agriculture, but not just as a standard geography lesson. We're looking at it as a fascinating story of human survival, ingenuity, and honestly, the absolute bedrock of India's economy. I want you to think for a second. Where does your breakfast actually come from? Sure, it's easy to just say the grocery store, but let's connect the food on your plate right now to the incredibly diverse landscape of India. Because every single grain of rice, every cup of tea, it all has this wild backstory of climate, soil, and a whole lot of human labor. Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We're going to cover how India farms, the 3 farming seasons, India's major crops, modernizing agriculture, and finally, the historic bloodless revolution. Let's get into it. Section 1. How India farms, from subsistence to commercial. Now, farming isn't just a one-size-fits-all thing in a country as huge as India. Look at the sheer scale here. 2/3 of India's entire population is engaged in this primary activity. That means the vast majority of the nation is out there producing not just our food, but the raw materials that run massive industries. It is literally the backbone of the country. So across the nation, we see 2 major extremes. On one side, you've got primitive subsistence farming. We're talking families sustaining themselves on small patches of land using pretty low-tech tools. They practice slash-and-burn agriculture, which is famously called juming in the Northeast, and they rely entirely on the natural monsoon. But then, on the flip side, you have commercial farming. These are massive operations using high-yielding variety seeds, chemical fertilizers, and modern inputs to push productivity through the roof. And sitting right smack in the middle of those extremes is intensive subsistence farming. You see this in areas where there's just massive population pressure on the land. Because of the right of inheritance, farmland gets divided up generation after generation, leaving farmers with these really small plots. So they're forced to squeeze the absolute maximum output from that limited space, which means it's incredibly labor-intensive and requires high doses of biochemical inputs just to keep up. Section 2. The 3 farming seasons. The rhythm of nature. Geography really dictates everything here, dividing the year into 3 distinct rhythms. You'll definitely want to memorize these. First is Kharif, which kicks off with the monsoon rains and gets harvested around September and October. Next up is Rabi, which is sown in winter. It relies on that winter chill and moisture from western temperate cyclones. And then it's harvested in the summer. And finally, Zayed. That's this quick, sunny, short summer burst right in between, perfectly timed for things like juicy watermelons and cucumbers. Section 3. India's major crops, the superstars of the soil. Okay, so now that we know how and when they farm, let's look at exactly what's growing out there. You really have to understand our 2 staple heavyweights side by side. Notice how rice is a kharif crop that absolutely demands heat. We're talking over 25 degrees Celsius, and heavy rain, well over 100 centimeters. It thrives in the plains and coastal areas. Wheat, on the other hand, is a rabi crop. It needs a cool growing season and moderate rainfall, doing really well up in the Ganga-Sutlej plains and the Deccan region. But beyond those staples, we have the true nutritional superheroes of the soil. Millets like jowar, bajra, and ragi might be known as coarse grains, but they are absolutely packed with iron and calcium. And then we have pulses like tur, urad, and mung. India is actually the largest producer and consumer of these. They're a massive protein source. Plus, here's the coolest part. Except for arhar, these leguminous crops act as natural fertilizers by fixing nitrogen from the air, magically restoring the soil's fertility for whatever grows next. Now, if you happen to be drinking a cup of tea or coffee right now, you're directly benefiting from plantation agriculture. This is a very specific type of commercial farming where huge, capital-intensive tracts of land are devoted entirely to a single crop. It takes a massive labor force and a really robust transport network to get that tea from Assam or that Arabica coffee from Karnataka processed and straight into your mug. We also can't forget the non-food crops, the materials that fuel our industries and literally make the clothes on our backs. Take sugarcane. It's a huge tropical and subtropical crop that takes almost a full year to grow. Cotton is incredibly demanding, needing exactly 210 frost-free days and bright sunshine. And then there's jute, beautifully known as the golden fiber, which is used for heavy-duty stuff like gunny bags and mats. Section 4. Modernizing Indian agriculture, empowering the farmer.
With over 60% of the population relying on farming, those traditional methods just weren't enough for a rapidly growing nation. So, post-independence, the government stepped in, seeing the farmer as the hero of the story. They abolished the zamindari system to stop exploitation, consolidated fragmented landholdings, and really sparked the massive technological shifts of the Green Revolution for crops and the White Revolution for milk. By the 80s and 90s, they had rolled out comprehensive land development programs to keep pushing things forward.
Today, that modernization looks a lot like direct critical safety nets. The government ensures farmers have access to cheap credit through the Kisan credit card. They offer personal accident insurance and broadcast special weather bulletins. And critically, they set a minimum support price, or MSP, for important crops to guarantee farmers aren't exploited by middlemen and actually get a fair price for their hard work.
Section 5. The Bloodless Revolution. The Budon-Gramdon Movement.
Finally, let's explore one of the most uniquely inspiring, human-centric chapters in Indian agricultural history. This was initiated by Mahatma Gandhi's spiritual heir, Vinoba Bhave. While on a walking tour, he met poor, landless villagers who were absolutely desperate for land just to survive. He championed Budon, the land gift movement, trying to solve massive land inequality not through force or strict laws, but simply by appealing to the empathy and conscience of wealthy landowners.
And the real spark happened in Pochampally, Telangana. During a lecture, a man named Sri Ram Chandra Reddy suddenly stood up and offered 80 acres of his own land to be distributed among 80 landless villagers. Just an incredible moment. This spontaneous generosity spread like wildfire, eventually scaling up to Groundon, where entire villages were cooperatively shared. Because it achieved this massive land redistribution without a single drop of violence, it became famous as the Bloodless Revolution. We've covered a ton of ground today, from primitive farming all the way to massive technological revolutions. So as you prep for your exams, or even just sit down for your next meal, I want to challenge you. Look at your plate and ask yourself, what is the incredible geographical story hiding right there? Can you trace the season it was grown in, the soil it came from, and the immense, incredible journey of the farmer behind it? Think about that for a while. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep that curiosity growing.